And we're good.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are in Cincinnati, Ohio today. And Austin and Amy Mathis moved back to their hometown to plant Grace Church in 2021. Grace Church began in the couple's living room. The church kept drawing new people, quickly outgrowing their living room and moving to a nearby elementary school. In 2022, they acquired a retail space
All right, so here we go. So what we have is now we start moving into the part of Joshua where we start talking the geography. But it's more than geography. It is also going to... Nick, you were doing fantastic. I know, I can tell you're feeling the stress, but you're doing wonderful. It'll all work itself out.
Yep. For all 4 people watching right now, you're good.
Rick?
Yes.
I just have a new definition of someone who's old.
What's that?
Someone who can remember before Google.
Before Google. If you can remember before Google.
In the before times.
In the before times. Yes.
Wasn't Joshua already like 60 when the book of Joshua started?
We don't know how old he was. He was probably...
Because before the 40 years, he was one of the young guys, and he was young.
Yes.
And you said you were thinking like around 20-ish.
Maybe. As early as 20-ish.
As early as 20-ish, and then 40 years happened, and he's still alive, and he's the only one still alive, but he's 60.
And Caleb.
Yep.
But Caleb was 40.
Caleb was 40 when he was picked. So, yeah. So, yes.
Constitutes an old man according to the Bible.
Yeah, I don't know. So he's older. So Joshua is getting old, is where he's at this. And really, I gotta tell you, the stress of leadership ages you a little bit. So that's the reality. So now we're going to get to the part in Joshua where we start talking geography. You know, really what it's going to do is it's going to lay down a bedrock for the rest of the stories, for a lot of the other things. So we're going to start seeing it, and I just I'll start hitting it. Now I did put up some maps if you're a map guy. I put some arrows just so you can if you're interested in that sort of stuff. Can you not see it? Okay. Well, yeah.
See the arrows.
Oh, the arrows are good. All right, so down south, if you can imagine, what we're looking at is this map. I will put it out eventually, not yet. I will one day put it out on the website, and I'll include the PowerPoint too, so if you're really interested in seeing it. All right, so as we look at it, it says this is the territory that remains. All the regions of the Philistines and the Geshurites and the larger territory, the Canaanites extending from the streams of Shihor to the border of Egypt northward to the boundary of Ekron. So right now we're starting out looking at some of the area down south. Why are they there? It's so that the future generations have the same opportunity to advance the kingdom that Joshua did. Because it's in the faithful dependence on God that we grow. So, and sometimes it's the resistance. It's the hard. We're supposed to have a little hardness in our life. I don't know if that makes. I know we don't like to say it, but it's kind of like the apple seed needs to go through the freezing of the winter in order for it to become germinate for that sort of stuff. For us to really prove ourselves, and prove in the sense of like metal, for us to purify, to be better, we have to go through a certain level of adversity. That's why last week when they had victory over all of those, all the armies that were in resistance to Yahweh, God told them to cripple the horses. And I know that sounds bad, but it means so that they can't be a cavalry, and to destroy the chariots, the weapons of war, because otherwise they would be dependent on them. They'd say, because we have all these tanks, we don't need God. Look how strong and powerful an army. It's so that every generation has to rely on Yahweh, on faith in God, in order to go and take the land. That's the idea, is to make them continually reliant on God. So that's what we see. So part of the reason that these people are in these areas is so that every generation has the opportunity to trust God and grow. So that's what we're going to see. Now, what we're going to see in the book of Judges, spoiler alert, is that that's not what happens. A lot of people choose to rely on the faith of the parents and not their own faith. So they have the land that their parents gave them, but they don't step out in faith, relying on God. And so we see the consequences of that. So we see not only the consequences of them not relying on the faith and acting out, but we also see that throughout the book of Judges, they end up picking up the same bad traits that the Canaanites had. And there's no difference in the end of Judges. There's no difference in the Israelite life than there was in the Canaanite life before. Now, before we think that this is simply a morality thing, it's not a morality thing, it's a spiritual thing. The reason that there's no difference in the way that they live their life is not because they don't know a better moral way. It's not something like that. It's because they choose to serve the same spiritual powers that undergird the Canaanite rebellion. Rebellion from Yahweh. When we look at the book of the Bible, this is not, when we see these other nations, when we see these other peoples, this is not about ethnic groups. It's not about cultural groups. It's not about language groups. It's about religious groups. So we often talk about the rebellion that happened in the garden with Adam and Eve, but we so often blow past the Tower of Babel, the story of the Tower of Babel. Because it's like, oh, that's how we have languages. That's why I have to take Spanish in high school, or whatever the deal is. But we miss really how the original audience understood the Tower of Babel. Because we use English, and we think English, and we think this sort of stuff, we miss the purpose of the story. The story of the Tower of Babel was not about the building of a big skyscraper. The word tower there is the same word that they would use for temple. So what that building was, it wasn't that, boy, this building's so tall it can reach the sky. The idea is this was a building where they would be able to grab the powers of heaven for their purposes. This was a temple. And what did they grab? They grabbed spiritual powers that were willing to be worshipped by man. So that ziggurat, that temple, that thing that they built, they continue to build on. And what do? Is they grab and they worship some spiritual power. Maybe we'd say demonic power or angel, fallen angel, whatever. And they would say, we're going to worship this spiritual power and he's going to enable us to do things. And that story of the Tower of Babel is just like the story of the rebellion before the flood, because that was a place where these spiritual powers were coming in and saying, we're going to make our own throne here on earth. So what we have in Babylon is the meeting of humanity desiring this spiritual empowerment, the same kind of thing, and then we've got rebel spiritual powers that are coming in and doing all of that. When we read these stories, we read the story of the giants, we're going to say giants and all this sort of stuff, it's not really about the fact that these guys are taller than somebody else. The word giant had so much more of a meaning there. It's the idea of, it's because they're great warriors. Sure, they're great warriors, but it's more than that. There was a spiritual undergirding here. It wasn't that these guys would be great basketball players or that these guys would be great, offensive linemen. The idea is that the reason that they're that way is because they have been supernaturally empowered by demonic forces. And that was it was seen as a battle. Now, looking in the scope of the Bible, the story, and this is, I know, it seems like I beat to death my focus on the land from the 7 days story. The reason that the establishment of the land in the 7 days of creation, right? The establishment of the land is God is making this sacred space to meet humanity. He places Adam and Eve as the first stewards of the garden, the first priesthood, right, is placed in the garden so that God can meet man. And that idea, that picture of the garden, is what the promised land is, a repetition of that. So the promised land is this sacred space that God is establishing in order to meet humanity. But within this garden, we start seeing that there are temples of rebellion that are sprinkled in there because the rebels have a different plan. So then the rebellion of Babel within the land and the rebellion of this sort of thing becomes this big issue. So when God is sending the Israelites in, it's because he's making a beachhead for his priesthood to come into the world to then expand and spread the gospel. We see the second act of it as the Messiah comes in, when Jesus comes in to establish in that land with the people that are ready his kingdom. And then his kingdom is supposed to come and spread throughout the land, and we're supposed to go and be the witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the world. Or the other way to say it is go and make disciples of all nations, to spread out from that area, to go and conquer and do battle against these spiritual forces that are working against it. That's the idea. When we start looking at the map, we're going to start seeing that that's really what's in it. And sometimes we miss this because we don't speak the language. So we miss some of these things. So I know that's a long bit here, but so we've got the Philistines, the Geshur. So that's like the Gaza Strip right there is the same area, the five towns of Philistines right there. That happens to correspond with what we call the Gaza Strip today. That area is right there. We'll talk more about it. So these words right here, the five rulers of Gaza, right? The Philistine rulers of Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron, right? Those places right there. Those areas are going to play a significant role. These little beachheads of spiritual rebellion are going to play a role throughout the former prophets. Eventually, they're going to be the big baddies, right? For the time of David. These spiritual rebels. In the north, the following area has not yet been conquered. The land of the Canaanites, including Mirha, which belonged to the Sidonians, stretching northward to Aphek, to the border of the Amorites. Okay. So we see that little strip right there. Sidonians. So how often in the Bible have you heard Tyre and Sidon? Often. That's going to play a role all the way through there. So we see that there's spiritual rebellion still in the land of Tyre and Sidon. So when Jesus is talking about Tyre and Sidon, when Jesus says, actually sometimes even says, hey, if the miracles that were done here were done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented. Very interesting. Tyre and Sidon is a really interesting area. That area right there is the Phoenicians. The alphabet that we use, an A and a B and the C and the D, that is called anybody want to know what kind of alphabet it's called? Phoenician alphabet. That's what we start pulling our stuff from. That's what we're looking at. So this area still has that spiritual rebellion coming in. And then it goes over, so that's like Lebanon. Or like if you're a good geography person, that's kind of like the Lebanon area. The land of the Gabalites and all of Lebanon mountains area to the east of Baal Gad, belonging to below Mount Hermon and Lebo Hamath, and all the hill country from Lebanon to Mizrath Meam, including the land of Sidonians. So now we're looking across. We're all Lebanons. Now, so this Lebanese area, this Sidonian area here, sometimes it's in rebellion, but by the time of David, it's submitting to Yahweh. And the timbers that they used to build the temple come from this area. So there's a sense where the king here is in rebellion and following evil spiritual powers. By the time of David, they're submitting to Yahweh. They're able to practice so well that they're connected to the temple building. And that's beautiful. But you know what? They don't always stay that way. Again, every generation, it's not about whether or not your parents are faithful. It's whether or not you are faithful too. Eventually, the faith has to be your faith. for it to matter. So that's what we see. We see that rebellion there. Now, these areas we don't pick up on necessarily because we miss some of it. This area right here is an area that stays in rebellion. It's an area politically, if we're thinking Israel, this is partly Syria, a little bit of Syria, modern-day Lebanon, a little bit modern-day Syria, all into what we call even the Golan Heights right now. So now you watch the news, and you're like, oh, Gaza Strip, you hear about that. Oh, that's this area. Oh, the Golan Heights, that's this area. We start hearing some of these places. They're still significant in the world today. Now, God makes this statement after he talks about these areas of spiritual rebellion that still remain in the area. It says, I myself will drive these people out of the land ahead of the Israelites. So be sure to give the land to Israel as a special possession, just as I have commanded you, including all the territory as Israel's possession, including all when you divide the land among the tribes of the 9 tribes and half tribe of Manasseh, because Manasseh has 2 portions. They get a double portion. Why do they get a double portion? Because that's the blessing that Joseph wanted for Manasseh, right? And why does Joseph have 2 tribes? Because that's the blessing that Jacob wanted Joseph to have, is a double blessing. Yes?
9 tribes?
9 tribes.
Why not 11?
Oh, because you have 2.5 tribes on one side of the Jordan, and then 9.5 tribes on the other side. So now you go 9 plus 2 is 11 and 12, and it sounds like that, but that's the territories. There's 13 tribes total because Manasseh and Ephraim are doubled, but one of the tribes is the Levites, and they don't get a special state. They're spread throughout everybody. Does that make sense?
You lost me.
Okay. Joseph has 12 sons, right? Okay. So 12 tribes of Israel. Absolutely. 12 tribes. Okay. Levi is pulled out and then spread among everybody. So that leaves 11. But Joseph is doubled. So that makes it 12 again. So Ephraim gets a space and Manasseh gets a space. Does that make sense? So if you count Ephraim and Manasseh as their own tribes, then it's 12 plus Levi, and Levi goes across the 12. Make sense?
He stayed on the other side of the river.
Yeah. There's another tribe that gets sprinkled in, but we'll talk about that when we get to the time. Simeon also gets a judgment against him, but we'll as exciting as that. All right.
It's not the northern part, right?
Yeah, partly. All right. So half the tribe of Manasseh and the tribes of Reuben and Gad had received. So this is all on the east side of the Jordan River before they went in. So that area that they'd already conquered while they were in the wilderness. While they're in the wilderness, there were some battles that happened. There were some spiritual rebellions that had happened. So the kingdom of God and Sihon, they had those, or Og, the kingdom of Og and Sihon, those kings had rebelled. They were giant empowered, they were supernaturally empowered, and they get wiped out. So then 2 of the tribes, Gad and Reuben, and some of the Manasseh people are like, hey, we would love to have this area instead of our area in Canaan. So they take those areas. So here you go. The half-tribe of Manasseh and the tribes of Reuben and Gad had already received their grant of land on the east side of the Jordan River. On the east side of the Jordan River, the servants of the Lord had previously assigned to them. This territory extended from the Arior on the edge of the Arnon Gorge, including the towns in the middle of the gorge, to the plains beyond Meribah, as far as Gibeon. And this included the towns of King Sihon of the Amorites and all who had reigned there at Heshbon, and included as far as Ammon, right? So that's what we're looking at. So modern day, we'd see it as part of it would be Jordan. A lot of it would be Jordan, maybe a skosh put your toe into what would be Syria as well. I know we say Ammonites. Anybody know what what's the capital of Jordan today? Modern day capital of Jordan. Ammon, Jordan. The Ammonites. Oh my gosh. Yes. So there's still these residues. So if you're interested, I think. Thanks, Ricky, for looking like you're interested, because it makes me feel better. It included Gilead, the territory. That place will play a role in the narrative later on. And so we're putting the setting for some of the narrative coming up. The kingdoms of Geshur, Makkah, and Mount Hermon. All of Bashan, as far as Selka, is in the territory of the king of Og, Bashan, who had reigned in Ashtaroth and Irdi. King Og was the last of the Raphaites. The Raphaites are a race of giants. Again, well, sure, maybe he was tall, absolutely. Maybe he was a powerful warrior, absolutely. But the idea is that there is some demonic power behind him. Within that trait, some scholars even suggest that Raphaim were demonic or shade-like ghosts. Like, think of like the Walking Dead of their ancient rulers. So all of that kind of sense of this undead kind of, I don't know, this is all, I can't believe all of that. Yep, no. But here, we're supposed to understand that spiritual undergirding. Bashan, well, what do you mean, Bashan? Does Bashan play a role? Yes. God uses it. The psalmists use it to illustrate this thing. In the Bible, boy, there's an eye chart for you. This is just some other instances where you see what Bashan means. In Deuteronomy, when Moses is laying out the area and giving it to the half tribe of Manasseh, he's noticing that he's noticing that those places right there, that the hills of Bashan here are the land of the Rephaim, the land of these supernatural rebels. As a matter of fact, by the time we get to Psalm 22, important psalm. Psalm 22 is the one that Jesus quotes on the cross when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Right? And you go to Psalm 22, and the beginning is this picture of the crucifixion as it's going on. It's that they're casting lots for me. It's all the prophetic things about Jesus' death. Of course, the very end of Psalm 22, spoiler alert, is about him being raised up and raised up there. But in the midst of it, in the midst of that dark moment where it looks like the Messiah is losing, the picture is that the bulls of Bashan are surrounding me, these spiritual forces. It's the idea that these demonic forces that have been working against Jesus, against Yahweh, are at this point, these forces are surrounding and attacking him at that moment. And they think that they have victory, because they did. They thought they won. They did not. Right? That's the sense of it. And Psalm 68, another great one. When it's talking about this, it says, the mountains of Bashan are majestic, the many peaks stretching high into the sky. And you're like, oh, we're talking geography. It's because there's hill country there. But then look what it says. Why do you look with envy, O rugged mountains on Mount Zion, where God chose to live, and the Lord himself will live forever? It says, I will bring the enemies down from Bashan. I will bring them to the depths of the sea. The picture here is that those mountains are mountains. They're spiritual powers that have set themselves up on those high places. So we see the mountains of Bashan as images of spiritual rebels, these areas that are rebelling against God. And when God says he's going to make those high places, when we read Revelation, it talked about knocking down the mountains. And somebody's like, well, is God saying that at the very end he's going to flatten all it because he wants everybody to look like Nebraska? And it's like, it's not that he's knocking down everything but like Nebraska. I mean, he can. If he made topography, if he chose to put the mountains there, and he chooses to, God can take the mountains and give them, and it's up to him. But the sense is not, it's not the physical, the literal sense of it that's important. It's the metaphorical or the allegorical sense that's important. It's the idea of all of these spiritual idolatries, these other things that set themselves up as the gods of your life, that they're going to be knocked down. So that's the sense of Bashan. And then, of course, you have that picture there. And I was wrong. It wasn't Ezekiel, although Ezekiel does mention Bashan. It was Amos is the one who mentions the cows of Bashan. And in this sense, these were women that were leading people away, leading their husbands away from service to Yahweh, which is linked to the kings here in Bashan. These were the people that were rebelling, that wanted. They hired a prophet, like a prophet for hire, a prophet for profit, a for-profit prophet. I don't know. Balaam, right? They had Balaam to come and curse the Israelites, and he said, I can't curse them. Every time he tried to curse them with God, he couldn't do it, right? So what his advice was he kind of advised him to say, hey, get the women, you got some hot women here, lead the men astray, and then you don't have to worry about cursing them, God will do it. So these cows, if you will, the cows of Bashan were the Midianite women that were sprinkled in amongst to mislead the Israelites. And the Israelites, okay, and they went away, right? And caused all the problems. That's the sense of it. That's what Amos is talking about. You know, she's like, hey, do all these evil things because, you know, we want to drink, right? Or whatever the deal is. That's the sense of it. For Solomon, what's the problem that Solomon has in his life? He's led away by those women, and they're seen as that same kind of thing. That same, listen, Ahab was an idiot. Ahab was a very, very dumb king of Israel, right? But what was his worst thing was that he just followed Jezebel. Jezebel's seen as the same thing. She's like, come worship my gods. And she's like, oh, you're pretty. And he does it, right? He does the same. That's the sense of it. But the Israelites failed to drive out the people of Geshur and Makkah, and they continue to live there among them to this day. So again, that to this day is probably, Samuel is writing to this day, so time of early David, right? That's who we're thinking about. But they still continue even past that point, but that's where I'm saying. Moses did not assign any allotment of land to the tribe of Levi. Instead, as the Lord had promised them, the allotment came to the offerings, burnt offerings, to the altar of the Lord and to the God of Israel. So the first thing that they said, he's going to say this many times, is going to remind us, we didn't give anything to the Levites. Now, it's kind of important because what tribe was Moses? Levi. He's in the tribe of Levi. So he didn't say, he didn't pad his thing. He's like, well, my family's going to go ahead and get the front of the. So we're going to see three things that are going to be mentioned here. The first thing about this is that the support that they get, where's the support's going to come? From the offerings of everybody else. You're going to give to your offerings and it's going to support them. But they don't get land, they don't get all this area, so they have to faithfully represent you, and the way that your provision is that you're going to do this. Now the neat thing is that they're going to be sprinkled throughout all of the area, which I think is a beautiful thing. I think it's very missionary. It makes it so this is the other thing, is that Levites don't have just like a little space because they serve God, right? So they're going to be doing all the temple stuff, but that meant that in the temple,
You preach too hard?
I threw my arm out while preaching. What is that? How does that happen? Anyway, so the idea is that Jerusalem, like, it's not that everybody that I live in Jerusalem and then I work at the temple. The idea then is that the people that work at the temple are going to be coming from the whole of the area of the 12 tribes. And we see that in the New Testament, right? When John the Baptist's dad, he lives in like Galilee or in Nazareth. He lives north, right? He lives outside of Judea. But he comes down because it's his time to serve, and he serves in the temple for a period, and then he goes back home. Which in a sense, it means that everybody knows somebody that works in the temple, right? It's that, you kind of get that spread out, but it also means there's not a temple accent. So you would go inside the temple and you would hear every accent from your nation. Because they recognize, that plays a role in some of the narratives. Some people can't say the should sound, right? These people say shibbeth, and these people say sibbeth. So we know that this person's from, So it would be like us. We go into, imagine we had a grand cathedral, right? And we went and visit the grand cathedral. But when we go in there, we hear people with New York accents and Texas accents and Michigan. And everybody's like, mountain. And you got the wide Midwestern accent. We hear our voice. We hear our tribe in there. There's not a Levite accent. That the Levites spoke like this, like the people of Simeon or Judah, or the people of Gad, or the people of Dan. That within the temple you would hear all of those accents. I think that's a beautiful thing. It's kind of like foreshadowing the idea of every tribe and tongue and going on. It's foreshadowing like the great, the Pentecost, right? Everybody's like, these guys are speaking to me, just like me. I love it. It's foreshadowing missionary work, where we go and learn the language of other people to tell them about the good news of Jesus. I just think it's a really cool thing. And it also, I'll take the lowest bit of authority here, but I think it's also an interesting thing that you see this represented here, and it kind of like flips the Tower of Babel. But anyway, I think that's cool too. All right. Oh, everything got so much smaller. All right, so here's the deal. I'm going to hit some names, and I'm going to start going fast on these names because we don't understand it, but I want you to catch some of the things that are in the names because it's going to make a point. Moses said, assign these areas to the tribe of Reuben. We're going to start here, and then as we flip through this, the territory went from Aor to the Arnon Gorge, right? We come down to Megba. So here's some of the names that the ones that I highlighted. I want you to pay attention. So, you see Baal? So that is the name of the god Baal. Is Baal a good guy? No, he's a spiritual rebel. When you see these things, that should, because if we spoke the language, we'd go, hey, wait, this is like going to Satan town. So God gave Satan town to this person, and you'd go, hey, wait a second. Satan town doesn't sound like a good place. Right? Or the town of Zeus, or the town of Aphrodite, or the town of Hermes. You would start looking at these and go, these are not the right gods. So then we see the word Beth. Beth means house. Oh, that's gentle. It's like Johnson's home. Okay. Could mean palace. The palace, oh, it's the president's house. Oh, that sounds great. Strongly, I would say, it means temple. So when it says Beth Baal Meon, that means it's the temple of Baal in this place. And you're like, your town is named for a temple of a god that's not Yahweh in the land that is dedicated to be Yahweh's space? That's a problem. So you start seeing that when they conquered these towns, it's not about conquering them politically. It doesn't matter if they come over and take over the town and put up a new flag. It's the idea that they need to be conquering that temple. They need to be pushing out there because that's the spiritual war. All right. So we see that Beth Peor, so these are Peor, then it's the temple of Peor. It's the temple of this. Sometimes the temple might be for the person that lived there before. Remember, ask me, or you don't know, remember, we haven't gotten there. There's going to be a point where the Israelites are going to do the same thing. They're going to build an ephod to a great, Jewish hero and put it up there. And this is going to be the town where we hold the statue or the icon or the ephod or of this other guy. We're going to be known for. It started looking like ancestor worship. It started looking at it's a bad thing. It could be a bad thing. Continuing on, the land of the Reuben also included the entire kingdom of Sihon, and then this is the point where it's talking here that at this point this is where Balaam was killed. Why was Balaam killed? Because he was spiritually in rebellion. He stood. Did he know who Yahweh was? Absolutely. Well, did God use Balaam? Yeah, God used him. Okay, but being used by God Knowing who God is not the same thing as following him. It's not knowledge that saves, it's obedience. It's submission. So that's the sense of what we have here in the land of Gad, right? Right there, we see that. So the land of Gad was all along the west side, the east side of the Jordan River. And then we see Moses had assigned all these lands to the tribe of Gad, the territory of Gazer, and the towns of Gilead, the half tribe of the land of Ammon. There's the capital of modern-day Jordan, right? At the town of Aor and Rabbith, and then you have Heshbon and Rabbith, Mipaz. So where the Gadites are, that's kind of their capital before they go into the land. When they're in the land, I'm just going to say it because it's funny, Shittim, right? That's giggles. The Ashar, the acacia groves, again, acacia groves or Shittim, that was their capital before they went into the land. This is where the Gadites are at. In the valley were Beth Haram, temple for Haram, Nimrod. Wait a second, Nimrod. Who's Nimrod? Nimrod was the guy who founded Babel. Oh, that's a interesting place to have a temple for that guy. That seems like rebellion. So you start seeing the rebellion here, the rest of the kingdom of Sihon and Heshbon, Jordan, Sea Galilee. So this is all before they go into the land. Moses had assigned the following of these areas to the clans that have tribes. So this is all beforehand. The territory included Mehan and all of Bashan and the former kingdoms of Og, all of these plains, and the royal cities of Ashtaroth. Who's Ashtaroth? Ashtar is the goddess. That's who it is. That's the town of Asher. Asher poles, right, that we read about. They're setting up out there. That's a problem for Israel going on. It's worship of this god. This god also would be the goddess Ishtar. If you've ever heard the goddess Ishtar, that's who they're worshiping. So towns that are about the temple of Ishtar are probably a problem, right? Okay, we're going to move faster. All right, so these are allotments that Moses made while in the plains of Moab, right? We finished chapter 13. We step into 14. The remaining tribes of Israel received the land in Canaan as an allotment of Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the tribal leaders. These 9.5 tribes received the grants of land by means of sacred lot in accordance with the Lord's commands. Moses had already given the land, here we go, about those Levites, right? But no land was given allotment to the Levites, right? So we see that Moses. The descendants of Joseph and had become two separate tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. And the Levites were given no land, there's a third time, to live in, surrounded by the pasture lands of livestock for their possession. So the land that was distributed strictly in accordance with the Lord's commands. A delegation. All right, so now we're going to step out of the map drawing for the prescriptive part. A delegation from the tribe of Judah, led by Caleb, son of Jephthah, the Kenizzite, came to Joshua in Gilgal. Caleb said to Joshua, remember what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, about you and me when we came here, when we were here from Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. I returned and gave an honest report, but my brothers, they went to frighten the people of Israel of the promised land. But for my part, I wholeheartedly followed God. So that day, Moses solemnly promised me the land of Canaan in which you were walking will be your grant of land and that of your descendants forever because you wholly followed God. By the way, Caleb is a member of the tribe of Judah. So where did they go? They went throughout the whole land. So there's a sense that Caleb has, or Judah has a claim on all of the area that all 12 tribes inhabit. Which, by the way, follows what Jacob said. He said that the scepter would be in Judah's hand, so he would reign over everybody. Until one would come whose the scepter would never leave, that he would be the king forever. Anybody want to guess what tribe Jesus is?
Judah.
Jesus is in the tribe of Judah, yeah. He's the guy. Now, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive And well, for all of these 45 years since Moses made the promise, even while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today I'm 85 years old, and I'm as strong now as when Moses sent me in the journey, and I can still travel and fight as well as I could then. He is saying, for him, 85 is the new 40. That's what he's saying. So give me the hill country. The Lord promised me, and you will be... when he promised, you will be remembered that the scouts, we found the descendants of the Anak were living there in walled town. So if the Lord is with me, I will drive them out of the land just as the Lord said. So what land does he want to take? He wants to take it with the biggest spiritual rebels. He's like, that's where the biggest supernatural resistance is. It's in the hills. That's the hardest land to take. And it's in fortified cities. So he is looking to take the biggest he can. So what we see is we see the faith that we want to see exhibited elsewhere. We see it here.
It's a pretty similar statement to David going up against Goliath.
Absolutely. It's exactly the same faith. We're supposed to see exactly the exact same faith. He is exhibiting. So what everybody else is supposed to do in generation, we zero in on Caleb to see it so we know what our response is supposed to be. So Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephthah, and gave him Hebron to him as his portion of land. Hebron still belonged to the descendants of Caleb, son of Jephthah, and the Canaanites because of that he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Previously, Hebron had been called, that's another one, Kirith. When you see the word Kirith, that means holy. So when it says Holy Alba, it's because they worship Arba. So that was the name of the place. A great hero of the Anak, a great hero of the giant people. Well, that's a problem, right? So what does he do? Caleb conquers it. Not only does he conquer it politically, militarily, he then renames it to Hebron, after the Hebrew people. And you're like, that is one of those interesting things. This land allotment that goes to Judah. Now I'm going to fast forward through here because this is really something that I want you to pick up. So this is the boundary. We're looking over here. We're going to follow the boundary here. It's going to talk about here. It's going to talk about here. They're supposed to have all the way, including what would be the Gaza Strip or Palestine today, maybe. It would include that area. It's supposed to go to Judah here. And as it's going through, the southern boundary begins at the Dead Sea. Kadesh Barnea, the holy, so as we come in. From there, we see Asmith until it reaches the brook of Egypt, right? Follows to the Mediterranean Sea. But look at the towns that we start seeing in here. This went up from the temple of Hogwath. Well, that's not good. The temple of Arbath. Well, that's not good. That it's these spiritual places that belonged to spiritual rebels, but they were given to Judah. From that point on, it went from Acre to Debar. We're going to talk about that place later, but that's what it's called there. Turning north to Gilgal, and then it's going to go up the slopes. So we're going all up to the springs of Shemeth and Rogel. Shemeth means the springs of the sun. I don't know if that has any significance or sunrise. The other one is like the springs of toes. Rogel was like toes or feet. I don't know if there's a spiritual thing. It might just be a nice place to soak your feet when you're walking in the desert. Sometimes it's just, a rose, right? That's the deal here. All right, and then it passes along that's the son of this, along the Jebusites, where the city of Jerusalem is located. Jerusalem is not part of Judah at this point. It is part of Benjamin, but the Benjamites never take it. The person that takes Jerusalem is, anybody know? Bible scholars? David takes Jerusalem. And David is the head of the Judeans. So it's the Judites, so the Judeans that follow him, right? It goes to the northern end of the valley of the giants, Rephaim. From there, the boundary extends across the top of the mountains, the waters of Nephto, and over the mountains Ephron. And this turned to Baalah. What is Baalah? That is a female version of the word Baal. So the wife of Baal, that's not good. Toward Kirith Jearim, there's another holy Jearim, right? The boundary circle to the west, from Bela to Mount Seir. Mount Seir is not a good place either. Another spiritual high place that's difficult. So these are all within the territory of Judah that the tribes of Judah is supposed to pacify. To Beth Shemesh and to Timnah, right? The boundary that preceded the slopes of the northern of Ekron, and it turned to all of this area to Mount Bera. Right? So there's Baal, right? There you see Baal again, Baal. To the mount of Baal's wife, right? That's what we see here. The western slope then was Mediterranean Sea. That's easy. There's no boundaries of the tribe of land. So those are the boundaries of the tribe of Judah. Then we're going to step back in the story of Caleb again. This is a reminder. This is something for us to see. The Lord had commanded Joshua to assign some of the territory to Caleb, son of Jephunneh. So Caleb was given the town of Kiriath Alba, again, that place that's worshiping this Arba. So then he turns it, so he not only takes over the town, but he wipes out the temple and turns it into a place that is centered on the Hebrew people, which is named after Arnak's ancestor. Caleb drove out these three groups, not only one group of giants, but three groups of Anakites that he drives out. The descendants of Shiphnah, right? You see these three people, the sons of Anak. From there, he went on to fight the people living in the town of Debar, formerly known as Kiriath. So this is the place of like the holy scribes. That's what that means. So it was a place of holy, like the holy library. Well, that's not good. These places are not good. So what's he do? He knocks it down and he calls it the town of the word. Well, that's kind of cool. But we see him renaming these areas that were named for their spiritual rebellion. He takes over and renames Caleb. Good for Caleb. I will give my daughter Aska in marriage to whoever attacks and captures Kiriath Sefer. Othniel, the son of Caleb's brother, Kinza. Now this isn't just because he's like, I'm looking for a good warrior, I'm going to sell my daughter. That's not what he's doing. What he's doing is exactly what Joshua is supposed to be doing. He's pushing to the next, he's passing the torch to the next generation. So who he's connecting his daughter with is whoever's going to exhibit the same kind of faith that he has. So he's passing it on to the faithful. He's passing the torch on to the faithful. Very good, Caleb. And what we see is the second generation following Caleb, Othniel, is exhibiting Caleb's faith. This is a win. This is what we're supposed to see. And so he goes and he captures it. And then Aska married Othniel, and she urged him and asked her father for a field. And so she got down from a donkey, and Caleb asked her, "What's the matter?" She said, "Give me another gift. You have already given me the land in the Negev." By the way, that's a desert. It's like, you've already given me the Sahara, so it'd be nice if we had some water. Well, that makes sense, right? Because we understand. That's what she asked for. So she expands it. But there's a sense that her asking for is a continued hope that her kids will continue to expand the kingdom. That there's a kind of that evangelistic passing the torch that we see in that story. So again, this was the homeland located in. So you see all of these towns. Kiriath Hezron. Now here's my problem. A lot of these towns keep the same name. If your town is known for being the temple of Baal, and you continue to be called the town that's the temple of Baal, something's not happening. Something is, and you were going to notice that the towns that get renamed seem to be tied to the story of Caleb in a lot of these towns. All right, so you got a town named for Molech. Yep, he's not a good one. Beth Pelet, still called Beth Pelet. The town named after Baal's wife, still named the town after Baal's wife. These are not necessarily a good sign of what's happening. So while they're politically or while they're militarily capturing it, there's a sense that the spiritual battle may not be being won all the way here. Again, there's the Ashnah that's the same as the Asher poles. So you see these towns that are continuing within Judah to continue in there. This one, if you look, there were these places, Mizpah, that's going to Mizpah and Lachish, they're going to show up later in the story. One of the towns is called the town of the Temple of Dagon. Remember, the Temple of Dagon is where they take the ark and the thing falls down, right? The supernatural thing. So there's this idea that yes, there was a war, yes, there was a conquest, but the question is whether or not the spiritual war was being fought as well. And so we see all this. Then we see we see these foreign gods all woven within there. This included Ashdod, the settlements. So these areas here, Ashdod, Ashkelon, these areas right there are worshiping Ishtar, and they needed to be removed. And then we have all of these places. Judah received the following: Kirith. So Holy Sena, that's the same town, but it became Debir, and then Kirith Arba became Hebron. So the places that we see that are renamed are the places that we see where Caleb and the Calebites continue. Anyway. So that's what we got. But we have, unfortunately, a lot of these places that continue to be called the temple of these foreign gods. To be continued. I know I went long. I really wanted to go longer. So what do we see from this? Well, first thing we see Caleb. What we see described in Judah is not necessarily prescribed. We see a lot of half measures, and the half measures are gonna be the problem. The fact that they were okay with financial success but not okay with spiritual conversion is a problem. The fact that they liked their businesses being successful or the military being successful, but they did not take as important conversion, evangelism, that's a problem. Hey, Gath, one of those areas in the Philistines, that's where the big baddie Goliath is from. When David physically conquers Gath, he doesn't just conquer the Philistines in Gath, he converts them. So he kills Goliath, he does this sort of stuff, but when he's on the run, the village of Gath ends up supporting David, and then after David becomes king, you know where they worship? They worship in the temple. The descendants of Gath come into the temple. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's what we see. In our life, what are we supposed to be? We're supposed to be participating in this spiritual war. It doesn't matter if we physically, it's not about conquest, it's not about simply physical conquest, that we go to some place that doesn't believe in Jesus and knock down their army. That's not it. It's about replacing the religion. It's about evangelism. It's about going and making disciples of all men. It's about offering to them a way for them to put down their arms in rebellion to God and instead come over and follow Christ. That's what we see in all of this. I don't know. I think it's important. It's one of the things that we miss sometimes because we don't speak the language.